I'm Bee.
And I'm Renske.
We are so grateful that you are here.
Welcome to School of Joy. All right, this first podcast episode, we're going to explore why School of Joy, why we came to this name, what it means to us. And we'll touch briefly on our lives, how we actually came to creating together, really, because that's what we're doing. We're co-creating a beautiful new project. And I'm very excited, first of all, very, very excited to start this project. And maybe you can start, Be about sharing about like what does School of Joy mean to you?
Yeah, I feel like it didn't take us that long to come up with a name for the podcast, which was really cool, and it felt just really naturally came to us. And I think for me, the School of Joy really summarizes actually how I've experienced life, in that it really has been a school for me. In my life, in learning how to live more joyfully. And when I look back at the trajectory of my life, there was a very, very long period where I felt really deeply unhappy, and I created a huge amount of chaos in my life. Over the years, I learned to look more at myself, to really take radical ownership of what I was creating. And then over time, doing the deeper inner work, joy was able to slowly grow out of that from an experience of experiencing life in a way that I really just didn't really actually want to be here on earth. And now where I am in my life, where I experience so much joy in the everyday, and that can be from simple things, from going out for a walk or having a cup of tea, and experiencing that really deep sense of peace and belonging, which is really quite a new experience for me, that belonging here on this planet, on earth, and in my community, and just experiencing joy in the very, very small things. I know from experience that deep inner work is really, really challenging, and it asks so much of us. And I think there was quite a long period of my life where I was looking really deeply at myself and looking really deeply at my creations, and wasn't feeling a huge amount of joy. In fact, it was like, as I was peeling back the layers, actually, I was experiencing, a huge amount of pain. Every time I would uncover something, I would be like, oh gosh, that's actually really painful to understand and to experience. It took me a while to get to the place where, once I'd peeled back enough layers and done enough of the inner work, that joy, it's, to me, actually, the analogy that really helps me explain it is like being born, where before you're in this little cocoon, before you really start exploring yourself, you're in this little ignorance bubble where your life is just what it is, and you haven't looked deep at what you're creating. And you're in this little cocoon, and then there's this really painful part where you're going through, the birth canal. Sorry if that seems graphic, but it feels really challenging to really look at yourself and all your creations. And then suddenly I realized I'd come through that other side, and now there's just so much peace and joy in my life. And it's not to say that there isn't still suffering. I mean, this year, and I'm sure we'll go into it another time through the podcast, but this year, we, as a family, we went through some really tough stuff. But it was such a different experience for me this year, because I was able to experience the suffering, and there was certainly suffering, but I was also able to keep in this zoomed out place, or able to get into this zoomed out place where I know that within the suffering there will be gifts, and that there's teachings for me. And yeah, it was such a different experience for me of suffering. Before, I would run from my suffering, I would really avoid it at all costs. But now I'm able to kind of sit in curiosity of it, And actually, as a result of that, as a result of allowing the pain, allowing the emotions to flow through me and be curious with them, I've been able to come through the other side at such a drastic speed and change my energy around what I was experiencing so quickly. And even within it, there were still these moments where I still felt so deeply connected and so like this deep sense of inner peace and belonging and joy, and that's what it is.
Mm.
Um, and I think, when I look back at how I was in the past, I experienced joy. I did experience that feeling of joy, but it was often very fleeting, and often it would be something quite big would happen. It was, it was something that my ego really enjoyed that brought the joy. When now it's just such a different experience where, in the everyday things, I'm like, wow,
Mm.
this is my life. Like, isn't this so
Yeah.
beautiful?
Yeah. Like less
Um,
attached to things, but more like
mm,
being like that's how I usually,
presence.
yeah, being present is the joy
Mm,
itself. Yeah. 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 Beautiful. Yeah.
mm,
Was there,
mm,
I was wondering, like, is there like a certain catalyst in your life? Like you talked about the metaphor with birth, and that's kind of like
mm,
a one moment where you're birthed into the world. Was there a moment for you where you first started looking into, hey, I might be creating part of this suffering myself as well? And maybe further down the road, as you said, like at some point you realized you had to feel the suffering instead of trying to push it away. Was there like a shift, a specific shift, or did that gradually sort of happen for you?
Yeah, for me, it was a really gradual thing. Yeah. Um, my My mum had been really unwell, a lot during my life, with mental illness, and obviously that had a profound impact on me. There's no getting away from that, and um, yeah, I think I just look back at how I, especially in my teenage years, I was just in this complete mentality of victimhood. Actually, interestingly, it was when I started nursing and when I started looking after elderly people and seeing housebound elderly patients that didn't have a lot of family around, were probably quite lonely, didn't have a lot of options. And it really made me look at myself and see how much opportunity I had. And I think it that was really the beginning for me of gratitude, like real gratitude. Wow, like have so much. I have literally my life. Like the world is at my feet. I can do whatever I want. And um, so there was that element. I think that was when the shift really started. But also there was this, if I'm being honest, like a lot of it was really fear driven of experiencing what my mum had experienced, the level of suffering that she experienced. And I always knew I wanted to be a mum. Like that was just like absolutely one of my life goals. And really wanting my child to experience me in a different way, like to experience me really looking after myself and really being joyful. And when I look back at the memories of my mum, the ones that really light me up are the ones where she was happy. And I think as a parent, it's so important. Like that's what our children want. When we're happy, that makes them so happy. So in my early 20s, my mum became unwell again, having been well for a while. And at that point in my life, like my life was just chaotic. I had lots of toxic relationships. I was really toxic in those relationships as well. Absolutely. Like I own just yeah, just was not a nice person.
So what you mean with toxic, as in not being a nice person, or how would you?
Just had so many unhealthy patterns in the way that I showed up in my relationships. And it really does stem from that victim mentality.
Yeah, so projecting onto others
Yeah,
within, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
which is normal, we all do that, but yeah.
Mm, yeah, yeah. it's still really painful to look back, actually. I have so much more compassion for that person
Mm.
now, but it's taken me a long time to get compassion for that person because I've experienced a lot of shame around who I was. It's one of the reasons why I like to be called B now instead of Becky, because I just feel like a totally different person.
That
And when,
shifted with your energy shift as well? You then decided to name yourself B, as in, or so to say? Yeah?
yeah,
Oh, I didn't know
yeah,
that. That's interesting.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
cool.
It's so funny when people call me Becky. It just doesn't feel that just doesn't feel like who I
Is it
am. Like
yeah.
like sometimes I literally have that experience. Who are you talking about? Oh, you're talking about me.
My alter ego.
Yeah. So yeah, so then for me, I started therapy in my early 20s. I think it was just that his life had got so bad that I just
Mm,
needed to do something. And it's funny because I often hear people saying how brave this work is. For me, it never felt that way. It felt like there was no other option. It was either live this really miserable life that I was living, or just radically change, which is what I've done. So it was a slow burner, yeah. And there was a lot of years where, we talk about this cycle a lot, don't we? This spiral of, before I was sort of this constant spiraling down. And then at that point, when I hit that rock bottom, when I started going for therapy, it was like, okay, I need to shift this. And that's where I feel like I started that uphill spiral. And the first bit was like trudging through treacle. And now the spiral flows so much easier, even within the suffering.
mm,
And when I started working alongside you with the spiritual self mastery, wow, that was such a huge shift. Yeah, amazing.
It is amazing. Yeah, truly amazing.
Mm.
And it's been so wonderful to see that unfold for you as well on this journey into spiritual self mastery. Yeah, that's where we truly dive deep. That's how I see it in my own journey as well. You become aware first of this cycling that you're doing, but actually just a repeating of the same, and you have this awareness. But at some point, you realize I'm not getting out of it. Like, I'm not moving forward. Actually, I can have the awareness, and similar to you, I've done work, I've done courses and some coaching or therapy, however you want to call it. But then there was this, oh, but I keep repeating still the same thing. And I just kept sort of stuck on only creating the awareness and the acknowledgement, having acknowledgement for what I was creating, but not really going deeper than that. And I guess that's where I share your experience of like the spiritual self mastery when that came into my life. That's also where this huge shift in such a relative short amount of time. And then I was like, wow, all these, what you say, the day-to-day stuff that then becomes so joyful and you become so much more grateful. You feel abundant. That sort of overtakes the struggle, so to say, or even within the struggle, you can also experience the gratitude. You can also experience a certain support within it. So I deeply, relate to that. So thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing.
As I could speak so much more about it, but I'm sure we'll get into it. I have so much to share around how I've experienced life. But yeah, I mean that's really why the School of Joy just speaks so much to me, because it sort of summarizes my journey of life so far. Yeah. How about for you, Enska?
For me, I was thinking back also on, it's probably been more the last sort of 8 years that I've really gradually shifted into experiencing more joy in my life, in the day-to-day life. But there has been a catalyst for me, which has been now probably 8.5, 9 years ago, where I had a burnout. And that for me, I guess, was this shift for the mind to understand, okay, how did I get there? First of all, I started asking these questions. How can I feel even too tired to go out for shopping or something, like to go out for a grocery shop? I couldn't get myself off the couch. I was too tired, too drained. My battery was more than empty at that point in my life. And shortly after, I think that was for about 6 months where where I was home, I wasn't working, and then slowly started going back into work again. Mm, And at that time, I met a new relationship, someone from New Zealand, and then I decided briefly after that burnout period to move to New Zealand. And I think that was sort of an extra step for my mind to be able to be open to change, because I was already changing things so drastically, moving from the Netherlands all the way to New Zealand, literally on the other side of the world. My mind was already therefore more open to change because I had opened that door already to change. So I knew, okay, I'm not going to go back to an office job. I'm going to choose something that I really like and really love. And that's where I walked into a holistic Pilates studio. And I guess that's where, for me, the self development and exploring well being and health started. For the first year, that was mainly scratching the surface, more physically understanding maybe a little bit more about mental and emotional. And then I came across this spiritual self mastery course, and it was like my soul was knocking on the door. Okay, and now we're going to dive deep, Renske. Here we go, you know. Why did I say yes to that? I don't know. I can't mentally, rationally explain why I said yes to that. It was, I guess, what we call that whisper, the whisper of the soul, sort of saying, yeah, we're going to do this. Come on. You're asked to go deeper. Because I saw the course and I wasn't like a firm believer in God. Not at all, actually. God to me still had very, I probably at that time, looking back, would still say God is the man in the clouds, like that people believe in as a religion. And we'll probably dive into that in an episode as well, what God means to us. But at that time, I wasn't really like, oh, God speaks to me. I didn't know who the Ascended Masters were, because that course particularly was channeled by the Ascended Master, by Inisa Mabuishta. No idea what channeling was, yet I said yes to it. I paid the money and I said yes to it. And the funny thing was, I rocked up at the first class and we were with 9 students at that time. And I think it was like 8 out of 9 or 7 out of 9 shared that first class. I have no idea why I'm here, and I have no idea what we're going to do, but I just had to be here. And everyone felt like, thank God, I'm not the only one that is crazy for following this whisper. So it was quite funny, actually. So I think for me, that moment, stepping into that course of diving deeper spiritually, was the bigger catalyst in understanding that suffering that I've experienced years back was something that I had created. And even though I tried to change things, I kept circling and circling back and being triggered by the same things, being triggered by the same people. Um, yeah, so similar patterns playing out. And then a year and a half into that spiritual course, I started feeling a drastic shift. And I had found this way of literally transforming my perspective. I always say it feels like I put on different glasses and I looked at the world completely differently. And I feel that those glasses continue to change as I continue to do the work. And the glasses just become brighter and brighter, and life becomes more joyful for me. not that anything has changed very drastically in situation wise, but my perspective has changed. And I guess that is something that I wish for everyone. I and truly believe, and I know you do too, that we all have this spark of joy within us. So just feel this deeper calling to spark and ignite those lights. And I think that for me, School of Joy is a way of sharing that and a way of connecting with, people that when they listen, so they then realize like, hey, this is also, I recognize this, or this is also how I feel to some degree. I resonate with this. And then that might lead to something new and a new step deeper. And then they start to also shift their perspective. And so it's really a calling to spread the light, that for sure, to spread the joy. And I think in terms of school, I think you touched that already as well. School for me means that every day for me is a way to learn more, like is an opportunity to learn more every day. It's the school of life that as human beings we're all in. The moment we chose to, our souls were like, all right, let's go. You choose, you're going to be Renske, you're going to be B, then you choose to some degree for the school of life. And so it's like every moment in the day is an opportunity to learn, hence the word school. And I truly believe that life is meant to be joyful. I truly believe that. Um, so, School of Joy, yeah.
Mm. I remember you saying something in one of our classes recently, and it was so true. You said every time we get triggered, it's like this little thing saying, upgrade available.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah.
and it's so true. And I think once you start this work, your perception shifts. And then it is literally like that. Like you get triggered, and rather than your old experience of that, suddenly you're like, oh, get really
Yeah.
curious about it. And it's like, oh,
Curious,
there's such a
right.
gift here. Like,
Yeah.
what is going on here for me? Like, what is this?
And I guess as well through the experience, at least that's how it feels for me, you also then start having experience that if I unwrap this challenge, which I literally see as a gift given to you, but it's still wrapped in paper, and you're sort of to explore what's in the gift, what's in the present. And then you start unwrapping it, and then you have this experience of actually receiving this gift. And then next time comes a challenge along, you can be a bit more excited of, oh wait, last time we really shifted something as we chose to feel it deeply, as we chose to not push the gift away and say no thank you. We actually said yes thank you, I'll receive this, I'll start exploring it and unwrapping it. Therefore you do need the experience that is possible, of course, first of all, because otherwise why would you try again? That's also very important, I think, in that. But yeah, indeed. Yeah. I now you say that, I remember that, oh yeah, there's an upgrade available,
Yeah.
or it's like a text message of your soul, I sometimes say as well, like, hey, let's look at this together, time to grow, time to learn. And that itself can already spark more joy than i- when you're having a challenge in front of you and you're going to be like, oh, again, I've worked on this before already. Why? And that's really dreading. That's really tiring. But the choice is ours, how we receive it, how we receive the challenge. Yeah, that's perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, when I look back at like some of my biggest struggles in life, like now I see them as absolutely my biggest gifts.
Mm,
You know, it sounds crazy to say it to most people, but those things are the best things that happened to me
yeah. Yeah.
because, yeah, I was asked to really look deep into those, into yeah, what I experience, and I think it is a choice. We have a choice to use that and create a beautiful life or not.
That is our power. That's a true power. And I think that's as human beings is what we're asked to learn is really to embrace that power that we have of choice. We can't choose what happens, as you say, like well, maybe to some degree, we can go deeper into that. You did choose your mother and you did choose that experience, but you can't choose how she responded to things. That wasn't within your choice because that was her choice. But you can choose how you respond to her reaction in the past. And in the past, you've done that in a certain way, and you decided at some point, I'm going to choose differently. I'm going to choose to see it differently. And that's the true power. That's the radical responsibility that we talk about in self mastery. When we start to take responsibility for how we choose to look at life. And then we can slowly start to shift it. But it's called a mastery, and therefore it's not something, you can learn in one podcast episode or you can learn in one self-help book. That's why we meet weekly with the Masters Way groups that um, we're part of. You need more time to master that. But then I do feel relatively short, because if you look at it, it only took you maybe a year to feel that big shift. Then from years of suffering, then a year's time is actually nothing. But it does take that commitment. Yeah.
I think that's why I feel really passionate about doing this podcast, because like you, when I joined the Masters Way, I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And I think one of my good friends, she'd done it the year before, and I could see such huge shifts in her, and I was just so curious, like, wow, what's going on here? And yeah, and I felt cool. I felt called to it. I felt like I was still really searching for something. And I just don't feel that anymore. I felt like I found what I was looking for. But yeah, I think I feel excited about sharing how we experience life, because I think back to, how would I have heard this podcast 10 years ago? Like, how would I have received this? And I hope that we can inspire even just one person listening to get curious. Wow, okay, there is a different way of living and experiencing life. That's what I'm so excited about for this, because I feel I am living proof of someone that has changed things so radically and changed nothing on the outside. It's
Yeah,
all in
exactly.
here.
I think another thing, but that's also for another episode, is we haven't even touched on us being highly sensitive to things. And also, I guess that's one for another episode. But for people listening right now, as highly sensitive people, you are quite overwhelmed quickly with life, with groups of people, etc. And I think that for me was also a big shift in this work, of not having this huge overwhelm of life, but actually seeing that I am in power of that I can shift my overwhelm into calm, into peace, into centeredness, etc. And so that's been a big shift for me as well. But I guess that's more of like a whole episode kind of thing also.
Yeah, we need to deep dive into
Yeah.
that, because it's such a huge one. And I think for me, I just always experienced my sensitivity as a curse, and it's not. And
Mm.
yes, if anyone is listening and feels that way, then keep listening, because
Yeah,
we're going to
keep
talk about that
listening.
more.
Send. Yeah. And I guess to maybe finish off with as well, um, to me, how this podcast came along so easily, and how we just, that's really for me also proof of the pudding, as in, like, it's proof that we have shifted a lot of stuck and stagnated energy, when now we're much more open to flow in our life. So I don't think it's more than that's a couple of months even ago. It's a couple of weeks maybe. I
It's
don't
like
know.
a few weeks. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
when I like text you and I was like, "Hey, do you want to record an episode with me? Because I would love for you to share your experience about the Master's Way and etc. etc. Get that out into the world." And then you were like, "Oh, funnily enough, last week I was thinking."
Even it was literally like the
Oh,
day
the day
before.
before. Okay.
I'd had this idea pop into my head, like, oh, you could do a podcast with Venska. And it was so, I literally can remember where I was, like, I was in my
Yeah.
bathroom doing the window. And then I was like, do a podcast with Venska. And it was like this idea that literally popped into my head. And I went, oh, that was random.
Random.
And then it
Yeah.
went. It went. And then the next day you text me and you were like, would you like to be on my podcast? And I'm like, this is so weird.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, it's hilarious because I just had this idea that we could do a podcast together. And you were like, great, let's do it.
Let's jump on.
And now here we are, like literally probably a month later.
Yeah.
And not even creating it, we've done a lot of prep to get to this point, but it's flowed so easily.
Yeah. I mean, we're now about like 35 minutes in, so it just flows. And I guess that is when you start to open up more to receive the flow of life, to receive however you want to call it, universal energy, creation energy, whether you want to call it God, I don't care. But tapping into this flow of life, really, that is supposed to flow through us, rather than through our mind holding it and trying to control it. We allow it in and we allow it to flow through us. And that's the podcast is an example how that came to fruition. It's a perfect example of that co-creation and flow. And I'm very excited. I'm very excited to continue this creation project together. And I'm hoping that the people listening, that you are as excited as us, and that you continue to listen to us.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Avenska has so much to share. I feel like really selfish. Like, I get like 2 hours a week just chatting to Avenska, all to myself, like all the things I can ask her. But yeah, I'm really excited to share all of that with anyone listening. So yeah, keep listening. So each week we are going to invite you to think of a joy spark in your life. This is an idea that came to us when we were thinking about the podcast. A joy spark is a moment in your everyday life where you experience this really profound sense of presence, connection, and joy. So I will share one that I had recently where I was out running and it was dusk, the sun was setting, and I had run up to the top of this hill. And there was this beautiful archway of trees at the top of this lane. And the lane is kind of like a brow. And as you head through the trees, you arrive in this beautiful setting of countryside where I live in Herefordshire. And I ran through this archway and just had this amazing sense of just being so present and so connected and so joyful. And it was so nice that I ran to the bottom of the hill and then I was like, oh, I fancy doing that again. And I ran back to the top and tried to recreate it and absolutely could not. It wasn't possible. But yes, so that's mine. How about you, Renska?
Beautiful. Well, yesterday, Tuesdays for me are very busy because then I have my work day. Then I go pick up my two beautiful bonus daughters from school together with my daughter Lily. And then we go home, we walk the dog all together. So it's kind of like we have a 30-minute drive from school to our home because the mom of the girls lives in a town like 30-minute drive from us. And the girls go to school there. So anyway, that day is usually a bit chaotic and having all these sort of trying to organize all these different beings, together. They're kids, obviously, and we have a dog that's 2 years old, so it's still in puberty, so it's quite chaotic. So when we then get home and all the bags and everything, everything, dropping it inside, I'm usually a bit overwhelmed, as in like physically, mentally. And then I was taking everyone out for a walk and I decided to take a couple deep breaths. And then I sort of I shifted. I felt the shift I became present again. I wasn't so much in my mind anymore. I became present again. And then I looked at the chaos again and I started laughing at myself. I didn't tell them, but I just felt, then a wave of gratitude for this chaos in my life right now. And the whole walk was different. I could have, and that was my joy spark, just to breathe, in presence with them. And they were being silly, and I could have chosen to be like, oh, come on, girls, yeah, cut it, but instead I was just giggling with them and just having that moment of joy all together, of them being silly and then me acting silly, and then we continue our walk with joy. So yeah, so that was my joy spark yesterday.
Before we close, we're going to take a moment for a short grounding and connection together. If this conversation resonated, we'd love for you to share it with someone who might need it right now. You can follow us on Instagram at School of Joy Podcast, and subscribing really helps this space grow. If you notice your own joy spark this week, or have any other reflections you'd like to share, comment below or share it with us on Instagram. We love hearing from you. Thanks again for listening.
All right, what we want to do every week as well is to ground and anchor our energy. So we're going to invite you listening to take a moment, if possible, if you're not driving the car or driving the bike or walking, to close your eyes. And if you're walking, or if you're, as I said, like drive the car, please keep your eyes open, but breathe with us consciously and take that moment of being present with what is for you right now. So we're going to close our eyes. Taking a deep breath in through the nose. And then breathing out through the mouth. Allowing our energy to settle. And just do that a couple times, breathing in consciously. And if you like, as you breathe out, we can send our energy all the way down into the core of Mother Earth. And the only thing that you need to do for that is to go there with your attention, to go there with your focus. And then let us give thanks for this beautiful life that we live. Let us give thanks for the joy in our life.